It was a tumultuous time, a period of unraveling secrets and shattered trust that had been building beneath the surface. The bunny incident, which had initially seemed like a tragic yet isolated event, now paled in comparison to the revelation that unfolded before me. As the days passed, the atmosphere at home became increasingly strained, and my attempts to address the underlying issues were met with resistance. The wounds inflicted by the bunny incident were still fresh, and my wife's pride seemed to overshadow any willingness to confront the deeper problems within our marriage. Despite my efforts to mend the rift between us, the resentment festered. The nickname Bunny Killer became a lingering shadow, haunting our interactions. It wasn't just a moniker thrown around by our children in moments of anger. It had seeped into the collective perception of others. The community around us, too, began referring to her as such, amplifying the strain on our relationship. The aftermath of the bunny incident was a mere precursor to the seismic shift that occurred when the truth about my wife's clandestine affair came to light. The disclosure from my eldest daughter was a revelation that shook the foundations of our marriage, casting a stark light on the shadows of deception that had been creeping into our lives. The dynamics at home had been changing subtly but significantly. My wife's peculiar behavior, her short temper, and the emotional distance she imposed became more pronounced. Attempts at communication were met with hostility, and any semblance of a peaceful resolution seemed elusive. When I confronted my wife about my concerns and suspicions, it triggered an explosive reaction. The air was thick with tension as she launched into a tirade, unleashing a torrent of insults and grievances. Every facet of my being became the target: my appearance, character, habits, and even my family. It was a barrage of personal attacks that seemed to be fueled by a reservoir of resentment that had been building over time. The emotional turmoil within our household escalated further as she resorted to locking me out of our shared space. The echoes of her tearful cries reverberated through the walls, creating a discordant symphony that underscored the disintegration of our marriage. In the aftermath of this revelation, as the truth unfolded and the wounds deepened, the prospect of salvaging our relationship became increasingly elusive. The path to healing seemed fraught with obstacles, and the need for resolution loomed large. As I emerged from the tumult of divorce a few months later, the scars of these experiences lingered, a testament to the complexities and challenges inherent in the unraveling of a once shared life. The revelation of my wife's infidelity unfolded like a slow-burning storm over our household, and it wasn't until my eldest daughter approached me that the pieces started to fall into place. The resemblance between her recent erratic behavior and the mood swings she had exhibited during her pregnancies with our children was uncanny, similar in intensity but even more profound, according to online research and the insights shared by friends and a counselor. While not professing expertise in psychology, the correlation between hormonal fluctuations, infidelity-induced guilt, and her emotional turbulence seemed eerily plausible. Desperate for reassurance that it might all be a misunderstanding, I resorted to discreet measures, ordering and installing hidden cameras without anyone at home being the wiser. The delivery discreetly reached my workplace, and I meticulously set up the surveillance system on a day when my wife was scheduled for a night out with her friends. The deployment of these covert cameras, effortlessly hooked up to the Wi-Fi network, granted me unfettered access to monitor every nook and cranny of our abode from the convenience of my home personal computer, laptop, and work personal computer. Initially plagued by reservations about the extent of my actions, I comforted myself with the thought that, if proven wrong, the cameras could be discreetly removed without leaving a trace. However, my worst fears were validated within the first week as the incriminating evidence mounted. The object of my wife's secret liaison was none other than a former colleague, a man etched in my memory from various social gatherings where their closeness had been palpable. My wife, who had abandoned her career years ago to embrace full-time motherhood, had maintained a deep connection with this former coworker, ostensibly her best friend. The affair partner, referred to as the affair partner, was a decade her junior, having been mentored by my wife when he assumed her position after she left her job. The revelation of this clandestine relationship sparked a cascade of emotions within me, compounded by the realization that my wife, well into her 40s, still exuded a youthfulness that belied her age. Her stunning appearance often led to mistaken assumptions that she belonged to a much younger demographic, and it became apparent that she had capitalized on this perception. Driven to share the burden of my discovery, I confided in my sister, presenting her with the damning footage captured by the nanny cams. To my surprise, she had harbored suspicions for some time, recounting an occasion at a local bar where she had observed my wife becoming uncomfortably close to a man who wasn't me. While no overtly intimate actions had taken place, there were frequent touches on the shoulders and lower back, prompting my sister's suspicions. In a bid to gather further evidence, I opted for a GPS tracker, concealing it discreetly in the trunk of my wife's car. My sister and her husband graciously agreed to assist in the surveillance, tracking her movements on the next supposed night out with friends. The twist in the narrative unfolded when she veered off the familiar path, choosing a destination 20 miles further away than her usual haunt, where she rendezvoused with her affair partner. The somber reality of my crumbling marriage continued to unravel, leaving behind a trail of betrayal, deceit, and shattered trust. It turned to my temporary abode, grappling with a surreal concoction of emotions that vacillated between disbelief, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal. The revelation that my wife, the woman I had shared nearly 2 decades of my life with, was not only engaged in an affair but potentially carrying the child of her clandestine partner, left me in a state of disarray. The shocking footage captured by the strategically placed cameras, expertly managed by my sister and brother-in-law, exposed a troubling reality. The affair partner, with whom my wife was entangled, was observed affectionately rubbing her belly during their interactions. It became evident that the source of her erratic mood swings at home was rooted in a pregnancy that bore no connection to our shared history. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, and the weight of the situation threatened to engulf my sanity. As I grappled with these existential uncertainties, the realization dawned upon me that attempting to unravel the enigma of my wife's transformation might yield no tangible answers. With cameras discreetly monitoring every corner of our home and my sister and brother-in-law graciously offering to care for my children during my absence, I orchestrated the perfect opportunity for my wife to pursue her desires without restraint. Seizing the opening she craved, my wife wasted no time in summoning the AP only hours after my departure. The subsequent night unfolded within the confines of our once shared space, witnessing a sequence of actions and conversations that painted a harrowing picture of deceit and betrayal. I spared the details, leaving the vivid imagery to the imagination, but what emerged from the recordings was a callous mockery of our shared life. In the sanctity of our home, they brazenly joked about me, openly discussed their impending parenthood, and strategized on how to navigate the impending revelation of her pregnancy. My wife, unburdened by remorse, revealed that this was not her inaugural affair, recounting an earlier liaison when she was 29. She expressed a deep-seated dissatisfaction with the facade of domesticity, confessing her weariness with a boring partner like myself, whom she deemed responsible for making her feel old. The affair partner, probing into the logistics of our shared custody, received a startling response: "He can have them." My own children, once the center of our familial bond, were now relegated to inconveniences in her quest for a fresh start. The callousness with which she dismissed the bonds we had forged over the years left me grappling with an overwhelming mixture of repulsion and disbelief. In my motel room, the revelation unfolded on the cold, unforgiving screen of my laptop, threatening to shatter the remnants of my shattered reality. The temptation to hurl the device to the floor in a fit of rage surged within me, yet I exercised restraint. Opting instead for a numbing refuge, I sought solace in a few beers, a solitary dinner at a nearby diner, and the ephemeral escape of a movie. As the night unfolded, the gravity of the situation settled over me, and I grappled with the daunting task of navigating a future marred by the wreckage of a once cherished union. In response to her distress call, the night of contemplation had transformed my perspective, and a determination to dissolve the shackles of a betrayed marriage now consumed me. No longer the affable and composed individual, I had metamorphosed into a man fueled by righteous anger, ready to navigate the tumultuous path of vengeance. In the light of a new day, fueled by an unwavering resolve, I sought the expertise of a divorce attorney with a reputation for ruthlessness. The cold corridors of the law firm bore witness to my plea for the meanest lawyer they could offer. Living in an at-fault state afforded me a strategic advantage, and the lawyer, initially hesitant, succumbed to a devilish grin as he perused the incriminating video evidence. A pact was formed, a handshake sealed the deal, and he promised to sink his teeth into a case that promised the exhilaration of justice being served. Weeks later, the papers embodying the dissolution of our once sacred union were delivered with calculated precision. On a day when I worked from home and the children were ensconced in the realm of education, the local sheriff, an unwitting career of legal severance, handed my wife the irrevocable proof of our marital demise. Her reaction, a blend of terror and frenzied disbelief, was meticulously captured by the omnipresent cameras. She stormed into my office, unleashing a tirade of fury, only to be met with an unwavering composure that masked the internal detachment I had already embraced. Her protests, fueled by desperation, echoed through the house. But I stood resolute, the sole contributor to the mortgage asserting his right to reclaim what was rightfully his. She, in turn, threatened to tarnish my reputation and livelihood with baseless accusations of violence, a move emblematic of her duplicitous nature. Unfazed, I invited her to unleash her arsenal of lies, knowing well that the truth of her infidelity was already laid bare. In a defiant act of self-preservation, my wife retreated to the sanctuary of our bedroom, locking the door in a futile bid to retain a semblance of control. The bedroom camera chronicled her descent into a theatrical meltdown, punctuated by a melodramatic call to the police. Theatrics notwithstanding, her eyes betrayed a concealed satisfaction, a subtle acknowledgement of the charade she was orchestrating. With the front door thrown wide open, I awaited the arrival of law enforcement, a stoic figure prepared to confront the consequences of her calculated theatrics. The unraveling of a marriage, once bound by love and trust, now bore witness to a tempestuous end, as justice and retribution loomed on the horizon. Realized he was out of the loop and didn't have the full picture. I calmly showed him the evidence, the videos that laid bare the truth about his daughter's actions and deceit. He was visibly shaken, confronted with a reality that starkly contrasted the facade his daughter had woven. My calm demeanor and the undeniable evidence prompted him to reassess the situation, and he conceded that he had been misled. As we delved into the intricate details of my wife's betrayal, her parents were forced to grapple with the magnitude of her actions. The woman they thought they knew, their daughter, revealed a side that had eluded their awareness. The confrontation was not only about her unjust accusations but the unraveling of a web of deception that had ensnared not only me but those closest to her. The aftermath of her release from jail became a testament to the consequences of her choices. Severing financial ties, I shut down her credit cards, leaving her to rely solely on her own resources for legal proceedings. She returned to her car, packed with hastily assembled belongings, a tangible manifestation of the fracture that had sundered our lives. The key left on the seat symbolized the closure of a chapter, a finality that echoed through the silent void she left behind. Her parents, once poised for confrontation, now found themselves grappling with the harsh reality of their daughter's actions. The fabric of trust that bound our families together was shredded, and the shattered fragments lay scattered, waiting to be reconciled or abandoned. The woman I had loved for years had metamorphosed into a stranger, leaving in her wake a trail of shattered illusions and the echoes of her desperate cries as she was led away in handcuffs. As the dust settled, and the reality of her choices sank in, I reflected on the profound disillusionment that had become my reality. The woman I once believed to be wonderful, intelligent, and endearing had been replaced by a distorted reflection of herself, capable of deceit and betrayal. The journey ahead loomed uncertain, a landscape marred by the remnants of a shattered marriage and the stark realization that sometimes, those we thought we knew best can harbor the most profound secrets. In the worst possible way, shattered the trust we once shared, and destroyed the foundation of our family. Her attempts at reconciliation were futile as the consequences of her actions reverberated through the aftermath of her tumultuous departure. Facing the disapproving gaze of my in-laws, I laid bare the evidence encapsulated in the recordings. Their initial disbelief transformed into visceral disgust as the truth of their daughter's deceit unfolded before them. Apologies were offered, and they extended their support, pledging to remain involved in the lives of their grandchildren. In a confrontational phone call with my wife, orchestrated by her disenchanted parents, they disowned her, severing the familial ties that had once bound us all together. The phone call ended abruptly, leaving my wife in the void of familial abandonment, and when my in-laws returned home, they discovered the remnants of her destructive rage, a poignant testament to her fall from grace. Despite the dissownment, my ex's parents continued to play a role in the lives of their grandchildren, a presence that bridged the gap left by their daughter's treachery. However, my wife, now effectively dead to us all, ventured back with her affair partner to gather her belongings. The chaotic scene unfolded as my sister and brother-in-law stood witness to her actions. Affair partner refused to enter the house, lingering outside, while my wife, aware of the omnipresent cameras, packed her things in a stoic silence. The children returned home, but she remained indifferent, ignoring their cries and pleas. The final act of her departure involved the deliberate destruction of cherished wedding photos, an attempt to elicit a reaction that, in my steadfast silence, went unanswered. After her departure, I sought solace in the support of my elderly mother, who stepped in to help with the challenges of raising the kids alone. The practicalities of life necessitated a acid deoxyribonucleic test for my children, a precautionary measure that, thankfully, affirmed their biological connection to me. A subsequent sexually transmitted infections test provided reassurance, marking a chapter of closure on the potential health ramifications of her extramarital exploits. A week later, my wife returned, proposing a clean divorce, an amicable dissolution that would grant her half of our shared assets. In the face of her proposal, I stood firm, rejecting any compromise that would soften the blow of her betrayal. The ensuing negotiations revealed the legal quagmire she found herself in, her realization that the laws of the state offered no escape from the ramifications of her actions. As I looked her in the eye, I conveyed my steadfast refusal to succumb to her terms. The scars of her betrayal ran deep, and the wounds inflicted on our family were not to be assuaged by a convenient settlement. In that moment, I asserted my resilience, refusing to yield to the woman who had, in the cruelest way possible, shattered the sacred vows we once held dear. Wounds inflicted by her betrayal were still fresh as I slammed the door in her face. The quiet exit marked a momentary reprieve, and it wasn't until the court proceedings several months later that our paths would cross again. In the sterile ambience of the divorce court, my wife's visible pregnancy testified to the consequences of her extramarital escapade. Curiously absent was her affair partner, as she faced the unenviable task of navigating the legal repercussions of her actions. Anticipating a cascade of falsehoods, I entered the courtroom armed with an arsenal of video evidence. Her attempts to fabricate a narrative were swiftly dismantled, leaving her with little ground to stand on. Unable to sway the judge with lies, she pivoted to a strategy of non-cooperation and a litany of extravagant demands. From a sizable chunk of my savings to an extensive list of my possessions, she sought to extract as much as possible. Bafflingly, she even demanded that I buy her out of half the house, despite her negligible contributions to its acquisition. The legal landscape, shaped by the at-fault state statutes, worked against her. Her status as the adulterer and her ill-conceived attempts to frame me further eroded any claims to a substantial settlement. In the end, she lost all custody of our children, leaving the courtroom with nothing more than her personal belongings and the car I had previously purchased for her. The house, once a shared space, now stood solely in my name, marking the end of a chapter that was marred by deceit and betrayal. During the divorce, she continued her attempts to perpetuate lies about me, but my sister, armed with the truth about her infidelity, ensured that the tale spread among our mutual friends. As the reality of her actions became apparent, our friends distanced themselves, severing ties with the woman who had betrayed not only her vows but the trust of those around her. The divorce finalized, my ex-wife and her affair partner left town, their destination unknown. Rumors of his dismissal lingered, but I found solace in their departure, unburdened by their presence. In the aftermath, I reflect on the unexpected turn my life has taken. From the innocuous incident of releasing a bunny to the grim revelation of infidelity, my journey through this tumultuous chapter defies the narrative I once envisioned. Yet, as the echoes of her deceit fade, I find solace in the newfound freedom from a toxic relationship, a chance to rebuild and redefine my life beyond the shadows of betrayal. Reflecting on the myriad comments and insights from astute observers, I've come to the stark realization that the crimson hue of rose-tinted glasses veiled my perception of the red flags strewn throughout our marriage. The acknowledgement, albeit belated, that I should have been attuned to these warning signs echoes within me. Now, as the curtains draw to a close on this tumultuous chapter, I extend my gratitude to those who traversed the labyrinth of my narrative, a journey that unfolded through layers of deception and revelation. And at its surfaces, a footnote in the sprawling saga of divorce proceedings, a triumph in disentangling my ex-wife's name from the house. Bank records, meticulous in their chronicle, unveiled a stark truth: only my contributions had fueled the mortgage payments. The courtroom, a battleground of legal intricacies, witnessed my ex's recurrent clashes with the judge. In the unforgiving landscape of an at-fault state, Her confirmed infidelity proved to be an anchor dragging her deeper into the abyss of marital dissolution. The lawyer, a metaphorical bear in a sea of sharks, orchestrated a ruthless strategy that culminated in a meager payout of $60,000 and the conveyance of a car, a vehicle purchased for her a couple of years prior, valued at $50,000. The car, now hers, bore the weight of a transaction finalized, a symbol of the financial settlement. Despite the offer of partial custody, my ex-wife's indifference towards our children, laid bare in the damning video evidence, rendered her disinterested in any semblance of custody. The court, recognizing the extent of her apathy, reflected this in the custody arrangements. Her willingness to relinquish all parental rights spoke volumes about her acknowledgement of a futile pursuit, a realization that she couldn't mold the situation to her whims. In conclusion, I express my gratitude to those who have traversed this tumultuous tale. The journey, a tapestry woven with threads of deceit and resilience, has found its resolution. As this chapter concludes, I extend a parting invitation to like, comment, and subscribe for those who found resonance in this narrative. Until our paths converge in the realm of storytelling once more, I bid you adieu, and take care until our narratives entwine once more.